I'm joined now by Pablo Alvarado. He is co-executive director of the National Day Labour Organising Network and joins us from Pasadena. Thank you, Pablo, for talking with us. Now, earlier in the day, you made a non-violent call to action to all concerned citizens to stand by those under threat of deportation. What response did you get from those citizens?
I happen to live in Pasadena, nearby the areas that were impacted by the Eaton fires. And this morning, we were notified that there were ICE agents lodging at AC Hotel, a local hotel. And the community began coming to protest the presence of those ICE agents who had already questioned the workers who clean the rooms at the hotel. And people from all walks of life came to stand with those workers and to demand that they leave our city, because our communities have witnessed the families being torn apart. Mothers, sons, daughters, grandfathers, children are being detained. We've seen ICE agents going to Home Depots to pick people up. So we're asking people who have the privilege to come out and protest and exercise their free speech rights to come and protest for those vulnerable communities peacefully. And today, the Pasadena community showed up in large numbers. And the message was loud and clear. We don't want to see your armored vehicles, men in masks coming to our communities to pick people up, to rip families apart. The message was loud and clear, and it was peaceful. And this is what we want. This is the moment where we need to protest peacefully.
Yeah, that is the big message here, isn't it? Because I did want to ask you how concerned you are when you look at the images that we're seeing there from downtown LA, when you see that violent protesters, and this is a completely different group, violent protesters hijacking your non-violent cause. How does that make you feel?
Well, the anger is understandable because you've seen armored vehicles and ICE agents armed to the teeth coming into the neighborhood. So I don't know who the violent protesters are, but the anger is justifiable. Now, the violence, in my view, is not, because we can send the message that we want to send without attacking anybody. So, and every time that there's violence, the most vulnerable communities pay the price. Every time that there are riots, we see the business of low-income communities that get burned down. We see the violence that impacts people. So obviously, we don't want that kind of violence, but we don't want the violence that the ICE agents are actually engaging in as well, because it's in my view, in some instances, it's more violent to rip a child from a family, from a mom. It's more violent than what's happening in downtown LA. Obviously, any violence is condemned here, and we don't want that in our communities.
And Pablo, where do you take your fight from here, your non-violent fight? What will happen in the morning, in the hours ahead? What is your next step here?
Well, we're talking to the authorities. We're talking to them about keeping peace, because when you have a situation of violence, de-escalation is very important. And I believe that the authorities would actually, hopefully, they take the right measures to de-escalate and allow peaceful protests to take place. This is the moment when we really have to be careful about what the next actions are. We are asking people of good conscience, people who believe the immigrants are part of the social fabric, the socioeconomic fabric of our communities, to come out People who give the keys to their nannies, to their housekeepers, to come and clean their homes. We're asking them to come to Home Depot and protect those who are in vulnerable circumstances peacefully. That's what we expect, and that's what we want to see. And I am sure that's what we were going to see in the next days. But it doesn't mean that things are not going to get out of control, and there are individuals that might want to engage in acts of violence. There are also provocateurs that we don't know who they are. They might not even be protesters. So this is all happening when there's chaos. And the chaos is not the community that it's initiated it. It's the ICE agents that have come into communities that have engaged in that kind of violence, and the community responds. And it's unfortunate that we're going through this in this moment.
Pablo Alvarado, thank you so much for talking with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Joining me now from Los Angeles is Steve Moore, a CNN law enforcement contributor and a retired supervisory special agent with the FBI. Thank you, Steve, for talking with us.
Thank you.
So, after 3 days of protests in LA, we are now moving into the overnight hours with warnings from law enforcement that this could be a pretty rough night, and we are already seeing that. What are your greatest concerns right now, given vehicles have been set ablaze by protesters and law enforcement is responding with flashbangs, tear gas, rubber bullets, and in other ways?
Well, my biggest concern is the safety of the officers, as opposed to the people who are remaining there, who are really professional protesters, anarchists, things like this. The people who were in the city protesting and utilizing their First Amendment rights to speak, those people are long gone because they're smart enough not to be out when the anarchists take over the protest. And so I think what you're going to find right now is a different crowd out there taking advantage of a situation. And my concern is that the police are and the federal agents are safe, especially when Chief McDonald says the LAPD at this point is overwhelmed.
And Steve, President Trump went ahead Sunday and federalized California's National Guard without the go-ahead from the governor. What's your reaction to that very rare move to deploy the National Guard without Governor Newsom requesting it? The governor saying the move was, quote, purposefully inflammatory and will only escalate the tensions.
Well, as somebody who worked the '92 riots for the FBI, I can tell you that you want every bit of help you can get. I do understand that there are concerns about their deadly force policy versus our deadly force policy. That's very logical and very important. But at the same time, you have to have enough people out there. And yes, it is absolutely unprecedented that a governor didn't first request the National Guard before a president sent it. The presidential administration will say, well, it's because we had to protect federal buildings. The Democratic governor, for political reasons, wouldn't ask for the National Guard. The governor will say, well, it wasn't bad enough. And so you've got a political situation while the officers on the street, they just want to get home safe at night. And I suspect that they're grateful for any help they can get.
Right, of course, Sunday afternoon, it was around 3 p.m. LA time, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the LAPD entered the area trying to move the crowds back and declaring the gathering an unlawful assembly, warning protesters to clear the area or face arrest and the risk of injury. What will likely happen from here in terms of law enforcement as we're watching through the night hours? What's their likely next move here?
I think happily, from what I heard from Chief McDonald, there's going to be some cooperation between the federal agents who are protecting federal properties and the police. I believe that they're probably going to, if they haven't already, declared the entire city an unlawful demonstration and therefore clear the streets, kind of the same thing as a curfew. And that way, anybody who's on the streets, you can only assume that they're there for nefarious purposes. And I think they'll work together to try and clear the streets. If they do that expeditiously, I think we could have somewhat of a quiet night. But I don't think this is over.
Thank you for that, Steve Moore, coming to us live there from LA. Appreciate it.